Hello, and welcome to another episode of Urban Legends and Mythologies. On this episode, we're actually going to discuss a military mystery. This is the disappearance of the twin sisters, also known as the search for the Texas Holy Grail. So let's take a sip of this New Belgium Voodoo Ranger Imperial IPA and start at the beginning. So a lot of you are probably already asking, who and what are the twin sisters? Well, the twin sisters were a pair of cannons that were used by the Texas military forces during the Texas Revolution. They are amongst the most famous artillery in Texas military history, and they would be considered the biggest archaeological find in Texas history if they were ever found. But like always, let's start at the beginning. And this beginning is actually very muddled because every aspect of the twin sisters is debated amongst historians, archaeologists, and even treasure hunters. These aspects include the design, the type, whether they were iron cannons or bronze cannons. Given the 1830s, they were probably iron. That's what I personally go with. Their caliber, they don't know if they were 4-pounder cannons or 6-pounder cannons. Even the foundry of the fabrication, some people think it was Hawkins and Tatum or Eagle Ironworks or Greenwood. The origin of the twin sisters moniker itself and when it was originally used and where they disappeared, it's all debated. The only thing that anybody can agree with was that there were 2 cannons and they show up right at the beginning of the Texas Revolution. And we know the cannons are present at the very beginning of the revolution because the infamous Come and Take It cannon was the first cannon that was fired at the Battle of Gonzales, the beginning of the revolution, one of the opening shots of the Texas Revolution. But it's actually after the revolution, after the Battle of San Jacinto, when the cannons are actually first mentioned in any kind of literature we could find. And it's a letter actually penned by the then president of the Republic of Texas, David G. Burnett, written on July 22nd, 1836, and is eventually published in the Telegraph and Texas Register on Tuesday, August 20th, 1836, which mentions these cannons and their name, and I'm going to read that letter now. So, from the Executive Department, Republic of Texas, Velasco, July 23, 1836. Gentlemen, 2 beautiful pieces of, quote, hollowware, end quote, lately presented to us through your agency by the citizens of Cincinnati as a free will offering to the cause of human liberty, were received very opportunely and have become conspicuous in our struggle for independence. Their first effective operations were in the memorable field of San Juanito, where they contributed greatly to the achievement of victory, not often paralleled in the annals of war. I doubt not their voices will again be heard, and their power be felt in the great and interesting cause to which they were dedicated by your liberality, and in advancement of which we were so adroitly engaged. To you, gentlemen, and to the citizens of Cincinnati, who have manifested so generous a sympathy in our cause, I beg leave to tender to warmest thanks of a people who are contending for their liberties and their lives against a numerous nation of semi-savages whose cruelty is equaled only by their want of spirit and military prowess. Should our enemy have the temerity to renew his attempt to subjugate our delightful country, the voices of the twin sisters of Cincinnati will yet send their reverberations beyond the Rio Grande and carry unusual terror into many a Mexican hamlet. Texas has no desire to extend her conquests beyond her own natural and appropriate limits, but if the war must be persecuted against us, after abundant evidence of its futility has been exhibited to the enemy and the world, other land than our own must sustain a portion of its ravages. Permit me, gentlemen, to tender you and your fellow citizens who have rendered Texas much efficient aid, assurances of my profound esteem. Your obliged servant, David G. Burnett. And let me just say that was really difficult to recite while I'm sitting here half drunk off this delicious Voodoo Ranger IPA. This stuff is like 9% alcohol by volume, and I'm on my second bottle. But the things I do for this show and y'all's entertainment. So essentially what the president is doing in that letter is he's praising the manufacturers who are obviously in Cincinnati for these cannon, effectively being instrumental in winning that battle and securing victory for the revolutionaries, birthing the Republic of Texas. Now, the Battle of San Jacinto was an 18-minute battle, and the details are going to come flying at you quick. So try to keep up with this craziness, because I'm going to go through the battle like step by step. So for context, leading up to this battle, they were in these thick oak groves and marshes. Now, while this was familiar territory for the Texans, this was kind of alien territory for the Mexicans. So already the Texans kind of have the advantage. So throughout the previous day, there were a few skirmishes and whatnot, however they encamp, and it's the next day when the Texan cavalry was first dispatched to the Mexican forces far left, and the artillery advanced through the tall grass within 200 yards of the Mexican breastworks. The Texan twin sisters fired at 4:30, beginning the battle. After a single volley, Texans broke ranks and swarmed over the Mexican breastworks, screaming, "Remember the Alamo," and "Remember La Bahia," Goliad, remember Goliad, to engage in hand-to-hand combat. The Mexican soldiers were taken by surprise. Santa Anna, Castrillon, and Almonte yelled often conflicting orders, attempting to organize their men into some kind of defense. So the Texan infantry forces, they advanced without halt until they had possession of the woodland and the Mexican breastwork. The right wing of Bullerson's and the left wing of Mallard's forces took possession of the breastwork. Within 18 minutes, Mexican soldiers abandoned their campsite and fled for their lives. However, the killing would last for hours because they were going to be hunted down, and this was their revenge for the Alamo, their revenge for Goliad. This was the defining moment in which the Mexican military would fall and Texas would rise as a nation. And there was a slaughter after this. There was a mass slaughter, and many Texan officers, including Houston and Rusk, they attempted to stop it, but they were unable to gain control of their men. They were incensed and vengeful for the masses at the Alamo and Goliad. And while the frightened Mexican infantry, they were screaming in English, "Me no Alamo," and they were begging for mercy. Now, they say that this is one of the most one-sided victories in history. 650 Mexican soldiers were killed and 300 were captured. 11 Texans died, with 30 others, including Sam Houston, were wounded. But that was the infamous Battle of San Jacinto, and it started with those two blasts from the twin sisters at 4:30. Now, after the battle, as darkness settled, a large group of prisoners was led into their camp, with the twin sisters watching over them. The twin sisters actually accompany these prisoners to where they're going. And it said that the twin sisters' final role in the revolution was to protect these 300 prisoners of war during the treaties of Velasco. And it's from this point on where the mystery begins of what happened to the twin sisters of Texas, because remember, these are the iconic cannons that, helped win Texas independence and kickstarted their republic. They're a sacred item to Texans. They're equivalent to here in the States. Texas wasn't a part of the States yet, but for context, here in the States, they're the equivalent to our Declaration of Independence or our Constitution. It's that same sacred mindset, and these guns, these cannons, are essential to that sacred central mindset of Texas independence. So, what happens to them? Why do they disappear? Where do they go? Well, there are a few theories and hypotheses on that, which I'll get into now. Now, while we have extensive documentation of where these cannons were from the opening of the war, the Battle of Gonzales, to the close of the war, the Battle of San Jacinto, we kind of lose documentation of where it was after the revolution. And, that makes me think that it might have just been put into some kind of military storage at the time. I mean, even back in the 1830s, when you're not actively fighting, you store your artillery away. Or it could have been in those early Republic post-revolution years. It was probably bouncing around Texas with the army, trying to shore up any pockets of resistance or whatever. Because, it's a new fledgling republic. They've got to establish a sense of order. So it's probably bouncing around with the army, most likely. Of course, if that's true, then that begs the question, where's the military documentation for this? Well, military documentation doesn't always last. It gets lost. You know how it is. But we do see some sporadic indications that they may have been used during these ongoing military raids and expeditions that followed the Texas Revolution, particularly 1842, when on 23 June 1842, ordered to San Felipe de Austin by Secretary of War and Marine George W. Hockley to be in readiness for transportation to any point that may be designated in opening the mediated campaign. Note, Hockley was the commanding officer of artillery during the Battle of San Jacinto. So they're probably sending something saying, hey, get these cannon ready. So these cannon are at the time in possession of, these guys. However, and then March 24th, 1843, a year later, ordered by the Ordnance Department to Frederick Shearman for various maintenance. So these cannon, they're being used, they need maintenance. Now, the twins also show up on 13 December 1841. They were used for Sam Houston's inauguration as the president of the Republic of Texas. They were fired off in celebration. 1853, they were used for BB&C Railway's dedication ceremony. And then in 1859, they were used for Sam Houston's inauguration as governor of Texas, because, by then Texas was a state. So they are popping up sporadically, but probably they're just being stuffed in military storage until they're needed. And it looks like, in the 1850s, they were just being used as dedication, ceremonial ordnance. And hell, even by the 1850s, they were probably obsolete at this point. So yeah, they're going to be used in a ceremonial purpose. That is until the American Civil War, because on 8 February 1864, a dispatch by a Confederate lieutenant named Walter W. Blow stated that the twin sisters were in transit to Colonel John S. Ford in San Antonio. And now Ford took 6 cannons to Brownsville, presumably including the twin sisters, and used them at the Battle of Palmito Ranch. And in 1865, a journal entry by Union Corporal M.A. Sweetman, he claims that he saw them in a scrap pile in Houston, stating that they were left in Fort Brown after Ford, learning of the outcome of the Battle of Appomattox Courthouse, had abandoned them. And of course, this leads to a subsequent theory that was proposed in 2010 that they were simply melted down for scrap by the Union Army who was occupying Texas at that time. Of course, this is where the mystery gets even more interesting, because that theory, that idea, it's actually contradicted by a man called Henry North Graves, who in 1921 claimed that back on 15 August 1865, him and some other guys actually buried the twin sisters in the woods near Harrisburg. And even a theory that was proposed in 1917, he claims that in July 1836 they were actually lost to quicksand about 40 miles outside of Goliad. So even as far back as 1836, you have all this conflicting data. However, there's one more piece of evidence which is intriguing. This actually is from the Houston Daily Post on 24 August 1897, 61 years after the Battle of San Jacinto. It was published in the Post on Sunday, August 29th, 1897, and it's a letter to the editor, and I'm going to read that now. To the editor of the Post, Caranucha Bay, Jackson County, Texas, August 24. Some time ago, you said in your paper that you would like to know where the twin sisters were and how they received their names. I, being an old veteran's daughter and wife, can tell you they were named for myself and twin sister Elizabeth and Eleanor Rice, daughter of Dr. Charles W. Rice, who joined the Army as a surgeon in 1836 and came to Texas in defense of her liberty. And I am the wife of H.S. Stapp, an old Texan who came to Texas in the year 1833 and served his country in every crisis. He stood guard at 16, belonged to the Rangers in 1845, and was a true patriot for his country and an honest man. Well, I must crave your mercy and go back again to 1836 and tell why the twin sisters were named after my twin sister and myself. In the beginning of the year 1836, the Medical College of Ohio met at Cincinnati to take a course of lectures under Professors Crop, Eberly, Buster, Black, and other great lights in medical science. They were setting a point. The northern physician asserted that a southern physician could not practice in the north, and the southern physician asserted that the northerners could not practice in the south, as the climate was so different that what would cure one section would kill another. And they settled it by meeting in Cincinnati and taking a course of lectures. My father, Dr. Charles W. Rice, went to the north in the beginning of the year to take a course also. Among my father's friends was a gentleman by the name of Lewis Allen, who lived with my father, a refined, true Christian gentleman, and my father loved him, as their characters assimilated. In the latter part of 1836, Mr. Allen was made a captain, and the ladies of Cincinnati bought the cannon and presented it to the company, and Colonel Lewis Allen, my father's old friend, named the cannon after myself and twin sister. Captain Allen went to Mexico with his company in, I think, the latter part of 1836, was a brave man and was made colonel, and when he returned to New Orleans, the ladies presented him with a sword and gave him a public dinner. God help him, I say, wherever he is the prayer of this old veteran Texas lady. The old cannon did its duty well and lies disabled and worn out at Galveston. They did their duty well, but useless now as their writer of these old-time reminiscences. I cannot say that word, I am way too drunk. Now my friend, the Post, put these old-time intelligible, I can't read what she wrote, happened. Not quite 8, but not old enough to remember. Very respectively, Elizabeth M. Strapp. However, there's no real way to verify that, and since then, the cannon are still reported to be missing to this day. Anything you see in a Texas museum right now is a replica. And while there have been searches for the infamous cannons, they have never been found. But if they are ever found, they will be the greatest archaeological discovery in Texas history. And on that note, I am going to end it there. I thank you for listening. And as always, if you do want to support the show in any way, I just simply ask that you tell a friend, spam their inbox. I do have it activated now on Spotify where I can take donations, so anything on that front would be greatly appreciated. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and check the timestamp for an Easter egg. See you in the next one.